Welcome back, sci-fi fans, to this science fictionary podcast. I am Andrew, and I got two very special guests with me here tonight. Michelle from Force of Light Entertainment. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Yes, good to be here. With two friends, so good to be here.
Yep. And Charles from Converswations.
It's fantastic to be here. It's been a long time coming, and she's the special one. I'm well, whatever.
Oh, you're special.
So we've been this kind of got put off a little while, and then I ended up kind of going, well, late September is the 20th anniversary. Maybe I should just wait till a little closer to the anniversary. And of course, you know, getting everybody scheduled is always a trick. So especially between time zones. So but we finally got it together, and so it's the 20th anniversary was last week of Shaun of the Dead, at least the American release of Shaun of the Dead. Which was a pretty limited release. It released in April of 2004 in the UK, and then we didn't get it till September. And honestly, it's one of those things that went pretty much totally unnoticed in the US theater. I didn't see it in theater. I found it a couple of years later. I found it right before Hot Fuzz came out.
Okay.
So what about you? I know Michelle just watched it.
I just found all these movies within the last year. So yeah.
So these are some of my, specifically Hot Fuzz is one of my absolute favorite movies to just put on in the background if I'm doing something. I learned it's kind of hard to do that with Shaun of the Dead. I don't know if you've had the experience of turning that movie on when you can't see it. It's it's an absolute nightmare. It's sirens and horns and just all the chaos you would expect in an apocalypse. It's just noise, and you don't notice it really as much when you're watching it, but when it's in the background, it's all you can hear is sirens.
That's cool. Never experienced that.
So I learned don't turn that one on in the background.
It's funny. I had seen the cover, and it's like, oh, yeah, that looks like a blast. It looks like one movie I've got to see, and it's just one of those ones that I didn't see. And Pat and I were watching the scene-by-scene remake that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost were doing of Star Wars, and that little 2.5-minute clip of them in like cardboard suits and garbage can hats, and seeing their chemistry. And I was like, oh, I got to watch that movie now because that was so good. And that brilliance of the wordplay they do and their interaction, their timing is impeccable. And Shaun of the Dead really, I mean, all three of them, but Shaun of the Dead for me is the epitome of that timing and that chemistry between the two actors.
Yeah. That, and then the kind of the movie magic of Edgar Wright.
Yes.
You know, the camera work. I mean, Hot Fuzz in particular is an absolute masterclass in scene transitions.
Yep.
They all three do it. Shaun of the Dead is a masterclass in long takes.
That morning walk.
That is one of the most masterful long takes I think I've ever seen in anything. And Michelle, I think you've seen the movie just the one time, right?
I've seen Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead, World's End once, but I've seen Hot Fuzz 3 times. So that lets you know which one I like the best.
Yeah. So Hot Fuzz is a movie that if people ask me to name a perfect film, Hot Fuzz is one of the first ones I will usually name. And I love Shaun of the Dead, but Hot Fuzz is a near flawless film. Shaun of the Dead has more of a feel at times of an indie film.
It does.
Okay. Which I love, but there's things that I think I think you could arguably say they could improve them. You know, some of the things that they did in that film. Hot Fuzz is just like everything lands for me in the way they did that film. But that's what I was going to ask. Which movie is your favorite? So Michelle's is Hot Fuzz. That's mine as well. What about you, Charles? Is it Shaun of the Dead?
It's Shaun, but it's funny. I love the grounded, put that in quotes, the grounded sort of villain plot from Hot Fuzz. It's a little bit more accessible versus the zombies are certainly in World's End. But there's something about the characters and how, like, if there was a puzzle that you could take the versions of the characters that they're playing within the 3 different movies and mix them around for the plots, I would have like this pastiche of characters. Oh, I'd love him in this one, but him in that one, and this character. I think I like the Shaun of the Dead, the characters as they're being played and how they're playing off of each other. in Shaun the most. I think the other ones are different and equally good, but just not as well placed for me.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how with Michelle having watched them more recently, and we've been chewing on these for a while. Charles, you played trivia. You did Cornetto
Yeah,
trivia with us.
absolutely.
Okay.
I did pretty good, I think.
You
If I
did.
remember
I think
correctly.
I thought I was remembering was you doing pretty well. I mean, my questions as usual, some of them were on the tough side, but
6 layers deep.
yeah, some of them were like were pretty deep in there with the running gags and stuff. But Michelle, like, kind of what is your just overall feeling about this trilogy as a collection? And, kind of, I notice everybody chooses Hot Fuzz or Shaun. Nobody chooses World's End. It's very rare to find somebody that puts World's End at the top. Even though these movies review all very within like a percentage point of each other on pretty much every site you'll look at.
Well, I think that's kind of something that you need to point out, like you just said, like, even though Hot Fuzz is my favorite, then Shaun of the Dead, then World's End, it's like all of them were very enjoyable in their own right. Like, there isn't a bad movie out
Yeah.
of these 3 movies. What was your question exactly again for me, though?
So basically, how you
I'm
rank
like, I
these,
was
and, like,
listening,
your
but say
kind
it
of your
again.
your take on these movies as just kind of your take on the collection of films as a whole.
Okay, well, I think you said the word kind of good. They really do feel kind of indie and like a group of friends that really enjoy being around each other, almost like the way Adam Sandler has his gang.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it's like
nice.
it feels that way, like in a British version of this gang of real life friends that just get together ever so many years and decide to make a crazy movie together. And it for me, like they all 3 work, like all the different parts they play. Um, again, Hot Fuzz is my favorite. Shaun of the Dead definitely being second, but they're all just so much fun. And like you said, what's his name? The guy who directs it, Edgar
Wright.
Edgar Wright.
Yep.
The way he does stuff, like the way they like you said, they transition scenes in all 3 of those movies, and like it will be they'll like the noise, even the sound quality of like the beer filling up the cup,
Yes.
and
Right.
it like it's just everything, like it's quirky, but it really adds to these movies, and they're
Yeah.
just very enjoyable to watch. And I feel like all of them are the type that like you would probably catch something new each time you watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially it's kind of British humor is really good about that. Like when you go back and watch old Monty Python things, like I still feel like I notice new things in the background of of
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail. Like I
Yeah.
still watch it and go, I never noticed that before. Just bizarre stuff. But this kind of has the same thing where there's just kind of layers to what's happening on screen. Not to mention, especially in Hot Fuzz, I love the layers, although they do this in Shaun of the Dead really well too. Like once you watch it and once you know what's going to happen, if you back up and rewatch, then you can see all the hints they gave you of what was happening. They're a little more obvious in Shaun of the Dead with like using radio and TV broadcasts. But even in Hot Fuzz, like there are tons of little hints dropped as to what's going on through that film. And then, I really like World's End as well, but World's End kind of explores a little bit darker the subplot with Gary King is sort of a little, it's almost in a comedy like that, it's almost too real life it pulls a little something away from the humor there towards the end when you realize like how broken of an individual, because you kind of know he's a broken individual, that he's never been able, like a failure to launch kind of situation, but like you don't realize just how bad it is until Nick Frost pulls his sleeves back and you see what he tried to do to himself, and that it went beyond just a failure to grow up. Like he really has a problem.
Well, do you know something else I really do appreciate about these? Really need to think through World's End more. I feel like they did in a very smart way. Like they all 3 are saying something about society or culture or just
100%.
people. But yet it's done in a very intelligent way and not in like a message pushing way that would be like agenda driven, but like in this way that like everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the first Shaun of the Dead, which was that the release order, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz,
Hot Fuzz,
and then,
yeah.
I feel like with Shaun of the Dead, I mean, you might be getting into that, Andrew. I might be skipping ahead. I feel
No,
like
fine.
it's such a good kind of fun take on how people can just kind of walk through life zombie-like and just
Mhm.
kind of go through the motions of
Yep.
life. And
Mhm.
you kind of got that. Then in the second one, you've got the greater good, something we've heard a lot in our culture in the
Right.
last several years. And I'd have to think through World's End. I mean, you definitely, like you said, have someone who can't, who struggled to really kind of break through and grow up in life.
Yeah, it's kind of this idea of like, for some people, just existing in this this culture with a strict set of rules that we have for how your life is supposed to progress.
Hmm.
And some people just can't find their way in that life. Like, where the world, literally in the world's end, the world has to go to chaos for him to center himself.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I like. Like for me, like an unassuming trilogy, right? If you say that this is a trilogy, in the sense that, okay, well, none of the characters are repeating.
Right.
The actors certainly are, but if you look at that progression from Shaun to Hot Fuzz, then to World's End, I see there's a family. There's a very strong knit group of friends slash family within each of them, dealing with that chaos, and then progressing through, and then coming out at the end as stronger for that, whether
Yeah.
dead or alive, doesn't really matter. But as a whole, the progression, like at the World's End, that maturity level that is hit in the third movie, I think is really deep for hey, look, take these other two movies, add them up. This is what you get. I think those, and like you were saying, Michelle, those undertones of the subplot for the evil, I think really does speak to wake up and take a look at what's going on around you, because by the time you get to the World's End, you can't tell. You really can't tell who's good or who's bad unless you destroy them, essentially. Whereas the other two are, well, the zombies and the cult, they're sort of more out in the open with what their threat is. And that's one of the messages that I take from it, is that be awake, be aware, but be mature about it as well. And that's what I mean. That's not even a comedic take to it, like you're saying, Andrew. It's deep, it's a bit darker, but you can still have fun while doing it.
Yeah, 100%. And they do. I mean, like Shaun of the Dead, part of the brilliance of it is that it's not a spoof of a zombie movie. It is a zombie movie. It's a spoof of a rom-com.
That's true.
and I mean, that's what, the original case was like, called it a romantic zombie, a romantic comedy with zombies. and that's, but it's they took and that was the beauty of it, is they took the zombie thing very seriously. I mean, they went to people like Romero with like, how do we do this? Like, how do we kind of shape the zombies, like as far as like how zombies work? They followed what at the time was very much the rules for the way zombie movies worked, and then dropped a rom-com right in the middle of it.
And conflict with his dad or his stepdad. I mean, that was those beautiful parts of it, those the familial, the conflict there, it just brings them all that much more closer together too.
Right. So one of the big things in it is running gags. There are running gags that run throughout a film. There are a few running gags that run throughout the whole trilogy. Do y'all have a favorite, kind of either just a favorite gag or a favorite running gag in these films?
Michelle?
I would go with, again, I've seen Hot Fuzz the most. In Hot Fuzz, I started to find it funny. Again, you say the layering on layering of kind of picking up the different humor. What is her name? She's become a pretty famous actress that's in Hot Fuzz. She's one of the cops. I can Google it if we need to.
No, I'm drawing a complete and total blank.
Now I've got it.
Really, Olivia.
It is Olivia. It is Olivia. Let me see. Let me get it, because I want to say her name. Where is
Olivia
she?
Colman? It's Olivia Colman,
yes,
right?
Olivia Colman. You got it. Like the way her character will just say the most random stuff and just like it's just like they keep doing it. And by the end, I was laughing along with her because it was so ridiculous.
And you took that journey with Simon Pegg's character, with Nick Angel, because at the beginning, every time she does something like that, he just blank face, just stares at her. But by the end, he's participating in the joke.
Yeah.
Like at the final scene in the police station, like he's participating in the
part of
joke
it. Yeah.
with her.
He's
Yeah.
part of it.
And she just always has the laugh, like at the most inappropriate times.
Well, the joke, yeah, everything about her character is at the inappropriate time. Like that's but no, she's fantastic in that movie. And then there's lots of little things. I mean, the number of British stars that they brought in for this really for all three of these movies is kind of crazy with people like Martin Freeman and Bill Nighy and all that bunch. I mean, I think the one that a couple of friends and joke all the time about is the Swan from Hot Fuzz. It's just anytime I say, I can promise you, I have a friend that anytime I say no, just one, he's go, oh, it's just the one Swan actually.
And the Swan kind of saves the day at the end.
Right.
Of course.
I love that joke. I mean, the fence joke is a classic. The taking a shortcut over the fence.
Yeah, that's what's one of mine is either the hedges or the fences, and the characters that can navigate that and can't navigate it change throughout the movies, which is just brilliant. And I love that.
And for some reason, I mean, the one that there's two jokes in Shaun of the Dead that just kill me every time, no matter how many times I hear them. One is dogs can't look up. I don't know why that one's so funny, but like Nick Frost's character is really, really hung up on dogs can't look up. And then my favorite gag probably is beating zombies with pool cues to a Queen song.
That
like
is
fully in rhythm.
It is, and they tried to reproduce that in the next movies in different ways, very successfully. I mean, the carnage and the paperwork of the battle at the end of Hot Fuzz is a perfect example of that. And they did that with many of the bar scenes in at World's End. But that is one. If you think, personally, I look at that scene as one of the most perfectly choreographed, fun scenes that you can have in a movie. I mean, they're killing zombies and just the way they're moving, and again, the camera work as it's moving around and the back and forth. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. What about you, Charles? Any other gags that are your favorite? Or
yeah, I like how they run into matches of themselves throughout the movies.
Yes,
I was trying to think of that if that was in Hot Fuzz. It had to have been. I just probably missed it, but. Like they walk by them, like as I think with Sean's ex in Shaun of the Dead, they're going opposite ways, and that's where Martin Freeman first pops up in the movie as a cameo. And then at the bar, in the World's End, they are walking by themselves as younger versions, as they're you think you're so cool, and like they're walking right by themselves. There's that's another really cool one if I pick up on that.
So one of the really cool things about that scene in Shaun of the Dead, when they pass by the other group, the matching group, I think I've told you about this. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, but the TV show Spaced, it was a British television show that's made by Edgar Wright, and it stars Simon Pegg. Nick Frost is also in it, but Simon Pegg and then the girl that leads the other group is his co-star in Spaced.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So that was a big cameo for them because they were just coming off of doing Spaced. So to have the two co-stars show up was, I didn't discover Spaced till years later, so I didn't get that part of the joke till later, but
keeps on giving.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think, and that's, I mean, I watch these movies all the time. Even the last one, I love that film. But before we move on from there, any other gags that jump out?
I'm trying to think. I had one in my head and then it just left. So if it comes back, I will let you know.
Okay. The World's End has some really interesting ones with the way. I mean, silly ones. I mean, there's some of them are so silly, like Sean asking, well, it's not a window or a door, it's a window. And then he keeps bringing it back up, the lintel. He keeps bringing the lintel back. But if you catch it with his character in Gary King, if you catch what Gary does, one character will say something intelligent at some point, and he will he will say it later like he came up with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's part of his knowledge. Yes. And I think in World's End, that's like one scene where you really see Simon Pegg's acting chops is when he drops off the packet of money, which of course he borrowed from the other three guys so we could get the $600 to pay him back. And then he delivers his mom's death. That you thought for a second at the moment, like, wait a second, was this a real moment for him, for Gary at this point? But of course, you sort of take it with the tongue in cheek because it's all completely false. And
Right.
But I mean, that was a really great little mini performance right there.
No, I mean, Simon Pegg is a tremendous actor. He's really not in as much as he really ought to be. But Nick Frost is, even though his characters are usually a little more like in the first two movies, I mean, his character is just
just ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah. But he is also a tremendous actor.
Yeah, and to pull off that authenticity of, let's say, especially in Hot Fuzz, where he's playing this dolt somewhat, that's a performance on its own because you buy it completely.
Right. And then in World's End, you get him playing the straight man finally. Exactly. And then, but he doesn't become chaotic like he is in the first two, but the moment where he's done and he walks down, he sits down at the table and takes all the shots. Because there was a shot for every character and he just walks in and just takes them all. But I think one of the things Edgar Wright, it's the layers upon layers upon layers. I mean, every one of the bars in World's End, the names of the bars have meanings. They have like the King's Head pub. I don't know if you ever looked at that. It's no. Simon Pegg. It's like the logo. It's Simon Pegg with a wig on.
Oh my God!
Like on the sign, it's the King's Head. The trusty servant is the one where Oliver turns.
Okay.
So but if you like all of you have Gary King and then everyone else is Page, Knightley, all these other names of positions that would serve a king. So,
dang.
And then, so the trusty servant is where Oliver gets replaced.
Oh, wow.
So like, there's just so many layers to a lot of those things. Let's see.
Another thing I like that's woven throughout the entire trilogy is just the brilliant wordplay and like turns on a phrase for comedic points, but also just like the, I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but they break words down and reuse them and throw them in comedic timings. But it's that kind of writing and the way they pull it off in performance. It's like it seems almost off the cuff, but it can't be because I guess it could be, but it's so brilliant how they just turn that on a second. You can't even realize, wait, was that just what they just said? And you're laughing your head off because they in fact are.
We do have a couple of people that have joined us in the chat. Andrew says maybe it's time for another trivia stream. I agree, Andrew. We will do that. Nick has also joined us in the chat. So
nice.
Thanks for hanging out with us. But anything like, so, I mean, there's so many things to the way these stories are told. So, I mean, what are things that, and I feel like different things about that grab different people. So Michelle, what is it about these stories, the way they're told, that really kind of grabs you?
Well, okay. Well, again, I'll have to use Hot Fuzz the most since I've seen it the most, but there's just kind of with Shaun of the Dead, there's actually like, I get what you said, that has the most indie feel because it feels the most realistic. Like it's got that most like indie feel to it. It absolutely does. But with like a Hot Fuzz, there's just such a unique like quirkiness to how they tell the story. Like the cuts of them, like you said, Edgar Wright, the way he cuts scenes and the way they shift to a scene and the way the camera will zoom in on someone. And it's just, I don't know. It's just a very unique way of telling it. And then it begins to feel familiar as the audience. Because like when we were watching World's End, when they would do like when they would shift scenes and like there would be like a beer being poured, like the way, like again, the sound design there, even like it just, I don't know, it's just kind of cozy at that point. By the time you're on the third one, you just like,
really, it is. And you see that style continue over. I mean, it's different, but like Baby Driver, you see a lot of those. He uses scene transitions to show you how time's passing. So, and I think the one that really stands out is just like a beautifully shot scene is when he's traveling from London to what's the name of the town? Charles.
In which one?
In Hot Fuzz. Totally drew a blank.
Yeah.
Wherever he's traveling, but he's traveling from the city to the country,
to the actual country where he's going to be the cop. Yes.
Sanford. It's Sanford.
There you go.
And so as he's traveling, it's showing you're catching cuts of transitions from different modes of transportation and him waiting for each, but it also uses the signal on his phone. The signal on his phone gets worse and worse the further
I never noticed that.
from London.
I haven't noticed that either.
That's crazy.
Because he's got the phone and it's the Vodafone, and he's holding it and it keeps cutting to the phone and the signal is less and less and less until presumably his phone doesn't even work by the time he's in Sanford, because you never see him use it, and he always has messages at the police station that he never returns.
I do remember what I was going to say, but it's my ADHD brain, so it's a little off from that. But
no, go for it, because that's kind of the way we roll around here.
Okay, well, it's the way I roll on my channel because it's the way our brains work. But I was going to say something I really appreciate about all three of these movies that goes to the type of humor. I don't know if you want to use the word irreverent, but it's definitely dark humor. And somehow it just really works. Like, it never ceases to crack me up. Say in Hot Fuzz, I mean, there's so many examples in all three of these movies, but say in Hot Fuzz, where Simon Pegg's character literally kicks that old woman in the face like that. You shouldn't laugh at that, but yet it's hysterical.
Yeah. Oh, there's that last battle. There's so many things because I mean, pretty much everybody's fighting is old.
Yeah.
Yes. It starts off with him kicking the old woman in the face, and like jumps the fence, kicks the woman in the face, and it's like, oh my gosh.
And that's what I think is the appeal of like the movies themselves, is that, like you're saying about layers, but also I think like, especially in Hot Fuzz, it does turn out to be like the way that Nick doesn't want to have this massive blow up with all the paperwork of all these weapons. That's the way it ends up being. And it ends up being this buddy cop, Terminator style Rambo shootout at the end. So you've got this massive action sequence, and you've got the intrigue of the cult, and then you have just a comedy, the buddy cop comedy between Nick and Simon throughout the whole movie. There's so many different little pockets of things that you can sort of like and then get exposed to in the rest of the movies. And that goes for the other two movies as well. That's what really makes them work as just enjoyable pieces. It doesn't matter how many times. And like you said, I never noticed that about the strength of the signal. One of the other things that I noticed my last watch through getting ready for this one in Hot Fuzz is that right outside Simon's apartment, like where he's staying, there's a swan on the table. I don't know if you ever noticed that. I was like, oh my God, it's right there.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and something else I like about these two, and it's Shaun of the Dead, I think it's the most, but it's there in the other two. Like Shaun of the Dead is really kind of, and I know this sounds stupid because of his age, but it's kind of a coming of age story. Because when it starts, he doesn't have a lot on the ball. You understand why this girl wants to break up with him. Like he's just kind of a perpetual child, basically. Right. And by the end, like he's like kind of discovered who he is. He's taken that journey, and like now he's kind of actually ready to embrace life and be a man at the end of it.
Right.
Right. And that moves right into Hot Fuzz, where he's the strong male character. He's got everything under control. Again, almost to a certain degree where he's pushing people away because he's too dedicated to it. And then when he gets to World's End, then he's midlife crisis time. He's got to relive the glory days. And that's that cycle, which I found it so, I mean, okay, fine, call Hot Fuzz your, Empire Strikes Back of the trilogy. But then as you get to the World's End, that maturity comes out. And for better or for worse, he goes through that transformation again. But that's how, for me, it works as a coming of age, as a entire trilogy as well.
Yeah. So do y'all have a favorite? Because there's a lot, we get introduced to a lot of great characters in all of these films. Do you have a favorite kind of second tier character?
So, but it can't be like Nick Frost.
No, somebody other than Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
I tap out.
Well, it's hard not to almost give it to Timothy Dalton in Hot Fuzz. He's just so good.
Yeah.
Killer.
Yeah.
So good in that.
Let me look at Shaun of the Dead and see if I can come up with who I want. Let's see. Cast. Here we go. Who do I find funniest outside of it? I don't know. I kind of enjoyed even that little reporter that's like always there and perky and happy.
Yeah.
Like not with them.
Right. He's great. I mean, there's so many good characters, like Patty Considine's character. It's one of the Andys.
Oh, yes. Those Andys, both of them are absolutely brilliant. Those two are fantastically written.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite gifts. Anytime somebody gives me an opportunity, I'm going to use it. It's the one where they're kind of mouthing off and they kind of slide off screen. He slides off, like one of them slides off and then comes back for a second. It's like
I loved all of Bill Nighy's performances. I mean, he's obviously a phenomenal actor, but his subtlety in that he grounds part of the movies and sort of gives you that sort of familiar sense. There's a sense of emotional attachment. I mean, the speech that he gives to Shaun in Shaun of the Dead, I mean, it was like gut-wrenching when he's sitting in the back of the car. And then in Hot Fuzz, his cameo, well, not cameo, but his little bit and piece. And of course, he was the voice of the big machine there at World's End. But that would be one for me. Just the ones he brought to the screen.
Yeah. And the thing is, like Philip, like his character, his stepdad in Shaun of the Dead, like it's a character that's kind of been a joke up until that speech.
Yes. Yes.
We have when we're going through the repeated cycle of the plan at the beginning, when we're looping and we're making the change to it each time. And each time, like the part that really gets abbreviated, it's like, go around, get mom, kill Philip.
Kill Phil.
And then the next time it's kill Phil. And then at the end it's sorry.
Yeah.
And the third time around, they don't even say his name.
At the pub and they're drinking.
So because the first time they're going to go over to Liz's and drink tea until it all blows over. And then by the end, they're going to go to the Winchester and have a pint until it all blows over. And in actuality, once they're all there, they're sitting there in the dark eating peanuts, which is a callback to, I cannot think of the character's name that likes Liz that he confronts that gets pulled through the window by the zombies at the end. He makes a joke early on about Shaun doesn't have a plan. We're going to wind up sitting in the dark eating peanuts.
And that's what happens.
Yeah, that scene where he dies, it was like, because the movie isn't that bloody up until then, and it was
you get like a full blown
blood
and guts zombie moment right there. Yeah, that's where it goes. No, we're gonna really do the zombie thing right, and it gets like that's definitely the goriest moment in the film, but.
Then I hate to say, back to the running gag as the female, I hate to bring this one up, but the fart in Shaun of the Dead. I mean, it's funny, even at the very end.
At the very end,
it's like that because you think you'll get tired of that joke, right? And then he uses it at the end as comic relief in the saddest moment of the film.
Yes, yeah. I'll stop doing it when you stop laughing.
Yep.
I'll sort of give an abstract character, but the pubs obviously are the hugest part of the third movie. But even in Hot Fuzz, where you see less of it, so much important things happen in the pub that when he does go there. First of all, he's very abrasive to Nick's character, but by the end they're bonding in there, and of course the Winchester in Shaun of the Dead. But it's also some of the most important dynamics are going on. Like his mom dies there, and what's going on in those pubs is a huge part of each of the plots of all three movies.
Yep.
No, definitely.
So what would y'all say? Because with the 20th anniversary getting here, there has been an increased amount of rumbling about the three of them getting back together, and Edgar Wright, and because Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg did the writing on all three of these.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of rumblings about a fourth film getting made. Whether that'll be something brand new or there was a long time rumored sequel to Shaun of the Dead. Now, I don't know what you do with a sequel to Shaun of the Dead unless Ed's going to be a zombie the whole time. I tend to think if they come back, they'll just do a fourth film and probably take on another genre. But what do y'all think about them coming back and doing a fourth film?
I will say, if they do that, I do not want a sequel to Shaun of the Dead. I think I'd be excited for a fourth film if it was the same writers and then the same crew getting together. I would be very excited to see what you do, because like you said, they keep picking different genres. So it's just pick a different genre and have a lot of fun with it. And in today's time, especially, even though it's familiar and continuing something we know, it's still unique and creative.
Right. Because you get to do, I think they should stick with the format, because it's not like your typical, oh, it's been 20 years, let's make a sequel kind of thing. It's technically, we can call it, it's a sequel because it's the same actors and it's held together by Cornetto ice cream, right? It's not really a trilogy. It's that it's held together stylistically and seriously, because they featured a different flavor of Cornetto ice cream in each film. And so I say stick with the format and just take on a new genre. And that way it stays fresh and it doesn't have to necessarily live up to, there's a lot to live up to and really the only one that I can, looking at, I go, you can make a sequel to that is Hot Fuzz. Yes. Because the other, I feel like, are too closed-ended to make, because in World's End, most of them are dead.
Yeah.
Most of the main characters, and everybody's kind of separated.
Yeah.
And I feel like it came so full circle. I feel like Gary had his full story to where he's found it. Like I said, it took the world becoming totally chaotic for him to become the stable one. But he came all the way around to that. So yeah, I would love to see them. I've been wanting them to make something else for a long time, and I think eventually they will. But yeah, I don't want a pure sequel. I want a new genre. And they could do something crazy. Like, these are people that love superhero movies.
I was going to say that.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Because I've been sitting here waiting to say what genre would they do. And I don't know if they could do it in the budget, because they keep these relatively low budget.
Yeah.
But if you could do like a Shaun of the Dead, a Hot Fuzz of the superhero genre, I actually think that would kill, because I think so many people are kind of worn out on that genre. So if it's kind of, if you have someone creatively kind of make fun of it to a degree, I think it would do really well.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot, as far as budget for something like that, I think there's a lot of room to make. Obviously there's been plenty of superhero films in the past that were made with pretty reasonable budgets. And I think that I think it's certainly possible to do a superhero film on a smaller budget than we see. Marvel's budgets are really overblown these days anyway. I don't really know what they're doing with all that money.
No one does.
Well, it's so much. Like the cost went up so much. It's like you're not doing more. So what are you doing with it? And also, I don't know, maybe one of y'all can tell me, when you talk about advertising budget for these things, especially something like Marvel. It's like, okay, you're advertising on ABC, you advertise in front of your own other movies in theaters, you advertise on Disney Plus. You're literally advertising on your own platform, like because your platform's so big.
Yeah.
Like it's almost it's sort of like it's a money laundering thing. It's like, oh yeah, we paid ABC
Wow.
$50 million for advertising. It's like, but you own ABC.
It's like it should really just be you did it. ABC didn't get any money for that advertisement. You know?
Right. So it's kind of like, it's like, did you really pay that for budgeting, or is that all? I guess it's all for tax purposes, but you literally just took it from your right hand and put it in your left.
Yeah. They wouldn't do that. That
No,
seems
never.
under the table.
That's
But
beyond Disney.
Yeah, but I agree with both of you. I think that they have the maturity, and then that would be fantastic. Look, we saw what they did, and Michelle, you pointed this out. As they're getting older throughout these movies, they're progressing their story of the actors, like Nick Frost and Simon, but also Edgar. As they get older, their perspectives change, their storytelling changes, and so they put up these almost like skeletons of a story of what you think you're going to watch, but then they fill it with a story that you didn't expect. And I think that superheroes would be a fantastic way of not spoofing, again, just using that to sort of draw you in.
I mean, you make a real superhero movie and, you know, you kind of spoof something else, you know.
Yes,
that's kind of
in
the
a
formula.
subtle way.
Yeah.
And I mean, what better example of telling a trilogy in 4 parts than Douglas Adams and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? So that would be a great homage right there.
Yeah. And Edgar Wright's got some experience in the superhero genre. I mean, he didn't get to finish it, but we would not have had Ant-Man without Edgar Wright.
That's right.
Wow.
Edgar Wright did all of the pre-production. He's still a producer on anything Ant-Man's in. When you watch Ant-Man, you can see his fingerprints are all over it. But Ant-Man happened because he created a whole bunch of test footage for how the shrinking should work and took it to Kevin Feige. Wow. And that's how that came about. And it was really, I would have loved to have seen him finish that film. But I mean, you still see his fingerprints all over it. But I think they chose to kind of separate while they were still okay with each other,
friendly.
I think it became clear that Edgar Wright wanted to make an Edgar Wright film, and it took so long. It took years between the time they did test footage to the time they were actually making the movie. The MCU changed so much. And so they had all this stuff that they had planned, and then it was like, well, now you can't do that because the story has changed. And so then they were having to come back and rewrite the story to make it fit with what the MCU looked like 5 years later. And it had changed so much. I think he just kind of went, I can't really make it the movie I envisioned anymore, and he stepped away. But you can still, when you watch that, knowing how much involvement he had, you can still see his fingerprints on it. But also he has built up a lot of credibility as far as, talking about budgets. It's possible that at this point that he could demand a little bit more budget from, the company. I mean, he commands a little more respect. Now, for one, the man does not miss when it comes to making a movie. He doesn't make a lot of movies. But when Edgar Wright makes a movie, I don't know if y'all have seen, I mean, Baby Driver is a fantastic film. He did what is the name? Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, wow.
You really need to see that. Yeah, have you seen that one?
I've seen it. I saw it once. I didn't realize that was him.
Watch it again, knowing that.
Yeah.
You're gonna see gags from Cornetto.
Oh, dang. Okay. All right.
You're gonna see the there's in Shaun in
hold on, I need this explained
the
to
jumping
me.
out the window thing, where Gary jumps out a window going to the bar. They do that same gag in
it's Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
So why is it, because it's Edgar Wright, why is it the Cornetto Trilogy?
It's simply called, so it was originally called, so it's called two different things. Cornetto because each film was represented by a different flavor of Cornetto ice cream.
So drumsticks, those the
Yeah,
UK
so-
version of drumsticks.
Okay, yeah.
So in the first movie, he goes to the shop and buys
Yes.
a Cornetto. In the second film, they both go to a shop and buy a Cornetto. In the third film, it doesn't show up until the very, very end. And Nick Frost is saying, I can't, he's talking about how the food's better. He can't, that there's no more processed foods, and he can't really think of any that he does miss. And a Cornetto wrapper blows up against the fence, and he tries to grab it before it blows away.
And you spend the entire movie like,
Going, where is it?
Where's the Cornetto reference?
And it's literally in his monologue at the end talking about the new world, the post-apocalyptic world.
Because it's the green, it's the green flavor in Shaun for the zombies, and you've got the blue and the was it the blue for Hot Fuzz?
Yeah, so Hot Fuzz is the blue and white, which is like vanilla and chocolate.
Okay, and then the third one is the red,
mint.
right? Is it
mint?
Mint. Oh, mint. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Wow.
So that's why it's the Cornetto. You'll hear it either called the Three Flavors Cornetto Trilogy, which is kind of what it is mostly called these days. I think more early on it was referred to as the Blood and Ice Cream Trilogy.
Okay.
But I think everybody's kind of adopted the Three Flavors Cornetto Trilogy as the name for this trilogy.
Well, I think there's room for a fourth flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah, so I would love to see a fourth one, but there's a lot of similar. Scott Pilgrim versus the World uses a lot of similar style cuts, scene transitions, passage of time. It uses a lot of those same storytelling elements that we see in other films. And honestly, Scott Pilgrim versus the World might be one of the most underrated comic book films ever made.
I think we see another first time watching video coming up soon for Force of Light Entertainment.
Very well so. Absolutely. I've never seen it.
Yeah. So, but over the last few years, I mean, he's done, so he did the kind of the thriller car chase kind of thing, heist film with Baby Driver. And then he has kind of a thriller horror film with Last Night in Soho.
Haven't seen that one.
That's him. I've been meaning to watch that.
That's Edgar Wright as well.
Okay.
Wow.
And like I said, the man he doesn't miss. When you look back, if you want to find a mediocre Edgar Wright movie, you got to go back pre-2004.
Wow.
20 years of making nothing but solid films. And he's one of those, one of those that whenever somebody says, who would you want to make a Star Wars film? I'm like, Edgar Wright. Let Edgar Wright make, but it's just one of those things, and not because of these, it's like, I don't think some of the scene transitions and stuff, but when you watch some of his more serious stuff, like a Han Solo film, heist film done with Edgar Wright, I'd be all about that after Baby Driver.
That's true. That's a fantastic
And then he
movie.
can do dark. I mean, he can go way darker. Last Night in Soho does that. It's a very different type of film for him. But I mean, he's kind of one of those guys that he's an artist and he kind of makes the movies he wants to make. And he's kind of gone out there and said, look, I'd love to make a Star Wars film or superhero film. But at the end of the day, I make an Edgar Wright film. And if that's not going to work with the franchise, then it just doesn't work.
Well, I mean, when you let Leslie Headland do what she wants, why not let Edgar Wright do what he wants? At least it would be good.
The thing is, if we want to venture out into new stuff, then let's bring in, because I'm way more about bringing in different types of film creators that are a proven commodity instead of continuing to experiment with the unproven, which is what they've really been doing across the board with books, TV, and movies. Is really kind of wanting to use the unproven, and when there are way too many really, really proven people out there like Edgar Wright.
Do you recommend Last Night in Soho?
I've not actually seen Last Night in Soho.
My niece has seen it randomly, but I think she liked it.
I know plenty of people that I respect their opinions that love it. I've got it. I bought it. I just haven't had a chance to watch it. Marisha's not as into that type of film, so it's one I kind of have to watch on my own.
Mm.
So I don't think it's like a blood and guts horror. I think it's more
Yeah, I
of
don't
a,
think so.
I think it's a little more of a
Psychological, maybe.
psychological thriller. Yeah.
And I think Scott Pilgrim is your next movie. I think it's got some great humor, some great visuals, and like Andrew's saying, it was a very low key, under the radar comic book movie that explores some really different storylines and the way they approach them too. It's the guy. Who's the main actor again? It's
Michael Cera.
Michael Cera. That's it. That's who's in it. Yeah.
You know, but the cast. I mean, it's got Chris Evans and Brie Larson, Aubrey Plaza. I mean, and this is like Brie Larson before she was unwatchable. So that's one of the things, is like you watch Hot Fuzz and you go and you appreciate what she does in that film, but it's just like,
you mean Hot Fuzz? You mean Scott Pilgrim?
Scott Pilgrim, yeah.
Yeah.
So you watch, something like Scott Pilgrim, and it's like, and then you get to, it was never what she did on screen that became the problem. It was the off-screen stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. We need to probably wrap up here. So anybody have any last thoughts? I mean, I could talk about these movies a lot, and I probably will do more on them. But anybody have any last thoughts on this trilogy before or any of the films individually? I do want to say, going back again, because of, the non-linear thought here. Another one of my favorite gags is in Hot Fuzz that Nick Frost mispronounces everything.
I was just gonna say decapitated. He says decapitated. That's the brilliance. That was the one I was trying to remember before. That's the wordplay, and it's so subtle. And they don't hang on it. They just gloss right over it. And then you're like, oh my god, he just said decaffeinated, and then you're laughing. I
don't know nothing about no skeletons.
Listen, since now we're into just random territory and saying what we want. The scene is pretty hysterical because, again, back to what Charles said, I think it does show Simon Pegg's acting chops when he finally has like a breakdown on all the detectives, all the cops at the end of Hot Fuzz. And he's like, I can't quote it. I'm not saying enough of that, but he's like, do you really think this many accidents have happened? And like, you see the light bulbs going off. Like it takes so long for these people to realize like this level of amount of accidents is not possible. That scene is just, what I was going to say with that is these movies, all three of them, they do such a great job of like things that almost come across serious. Like they play them serious, but yet they're hysterical. Like it's hard to explain. It's hard to put into words. And that's what kind of my final thoughts I would say on these movies is I think especially in backdrop of today's movies, these were so unique. They were so creative. They're such like British humor that I've realized I really appreciate and like. And they're just, I mean, this is kind of what cinema was supposed to be. It's just, they're just so creative. I just really appreciate
they're incredibly well-made, production values off the charts on all three movies. And they're fun, but they're not just shallow. They're not just mindless fun. There are messages behind the story they're telling, which is why Edgar Wright was the perfect person to do Scott Pilgrim with kind of the underlying messages of that film. Is because he's so good at weaving those things in and out, but it's just so funny, and I appreciate it so much how they can have just such a serious moment, like, your dad thinks he's judge, jury, and executioner. It's followed by he's not Judge, Judy, and executioner.
And that's what I'm saying. They play these so serious, and then 2 seconds later, like somehow it's comedic.
Yeah.
And that's what I've said. I think, not to make they're like an unofficial troupe, like Monty Python, where they have this creative grouping of people who can write and direct and do all these different kinds of things. And no matter what subject they're talking about, they pull it off in a 2 and 3 and 4 layer deep comedy that you can pick up if you're paying attention to a different thing. So it's not like they are Monty Python, but they're a modern day version of a creative group of people who can really pull things off.
Right.
Yeah. And I think if anything, again, in the backdrop of today, These three movies, they show that like what is so important isn't having just throwing all kinds of cash at a movie, but it's having a creative director that knows what he's doing, and having, a well-written script.
Yeah.
These scripts are, they're brilliant.
Yeah.
They are, and they're brilliant in the main message, and then just the underlying things. Nothing, no joke, no line, nothing is wasted in these films. The most inconsequential line, like lines are never just totally throwaway.
Oh, yeah.
They will come back and be used as a joke later on.
Yeah.
And so that they're brilliant films. And if you're watching this, you hadn't seen those films, like I think all three of us would highly recommend them.
Definitely.
And so hopefully one day we'll get a fourth one. I would love to see them do something else together.
Yeah.
It would be a shame if they work so well together. And it's like apart, they're different. Like, I mean, they still do good things. Edgar Wright's a great director, but you look at Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. I mean, they made the movie Paul. I don't know if you seen.
Haven't seen it,
Paul?
but yeah.
And it's with them, and they pick up an alien basically, and they're trying to help this alien get somewhere. The alien is Seth Rogen, so if you can handle Seth Rogen voicing something, you'll make it through it. It's funny, it's good, but it's missing a piece when you watch it. Like it's the three of them together just create absolute magic on screen. Like their timing is so good together.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
Yeah. But all right, I think that's going to probably be a good place to wrap us up tonight. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Michelle, for coming back and joining me for an episode. It's I think Michelle's been on an episode with us before, but I think it's been a really long time.
It's been a while. I think the last time I was on, we talked Lord of the Rings. Like it's been like probably 3 years. I don't know, 2 years. It's been a while.
It's been a while. So we'll have to
in a minute.
We'll have to make it more frequently, because I enjoy talking with y'all. And thank you to Andrew and Nick for hanging out with us in the chat. Nick said he has not seen any of these movies. So Nick, if you're in the mood for a good comedy, these are really, really great. Especially I see that you liked Scott Pilgrim. If you liked Scott Pilgrim, I think you will really enjoy these three films.
And I think for October, maybe start with Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, absolutely.
There you go.
If you're going to watch them, start with Shaun, because I would watch them in order. You don't have to enjoy them. You don't have to see them together. And KB is in the chat. Thank you for hanging out with us. But I would watch them in order, because there are jokes, at least the first time you watch them, there are gags that carry over from film to film, and you kind of have to take them in the order that they chose to give them to you.
Nice.
But that's going to do it for tonight. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for hanging out in the chat. And until next time, may the force be with you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Yeah.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.